Hi everyone, it's April. I'm here to share with you my most intimidating books. These are the books that I am most terrified to get to, but I really want to get to. Some of them have been on my shelves for years. So let's get right into it. So I've got 10 here, the top 10 most intimidating books. This isn't ranked in any way, shape, or form. I will tell you there are a lot of classics in here, which is not surprising in some ways, but at the same time, I studied English literature. I shouldn't be terrified of classics, but here we are, and the proof is in the pudding. After I started pulling all of these, I was like, oh, there is a horror in here. So there's that. Let's dive right in. Okay, the first book I want to talk to you about is a book I'm terrified to read. It is a historical fiction book, and it's called The Pillars of the Earth. I've had this on my shelves for years. I think this was one of the first books I bought when I started BookTube. And here we are, many years later, still haven't read it. I always intend to, and I always get scared. So this is about a family, I think in the 13th century or the 12th century, and they build a cathedral, and I don't know much more about it than that. That sounds very boring. Apparently it's amazing, but I just don't know anymore. I really have only heard good things about this though, so I shouldn't be overly intimidated. So there's that. Next is a classic that I have been wanting to read for a good long time now. Actually, you guys suggested that I pick this up from my Amazon wish list, and this is Wives and Daughters by Elizabeth Gaskell. So this follows a young woman named Molly. Her father remarries. I think her mother has died and her father decides to remarry, and he remarries, unfortunately, a woman who's very self-centered, very vain, and she comes part and parcel with her own daughter whose name is Cynthia, and Molly tries to befriend Cynthia, and she kind of becomes her go-between in all sorts of romantic endeavors. It honestly sounds really fun. I have heard really amazing things about this as well. Apparently Elizabeth Gaskell died before she finished reading this, or writing this, I should say. But it doesn't affect the end. I have heard good things from many people, so I shouldn't be overly scared, but it's big. You'll see a theme. You'll probably see a theme here. These are all large books. Yes, they are. Next is a contemporary book that, oh guys, this probably is one of the top 3 most intimidating books for me, and that is The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt. I didn't like The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I DNF'd it because I found the characters so unlikable and pretentious. I don't mind unlikable characters, but pretentious characters drive me insane. In this book, we follow Theo. His mother dies very suddenly in an accident, and he goes to stay with, I think, a family friend, and he's obviously devastated from this. This shows him trying to find friends, but it also shows him dive into the criminal underworld that I think revolves around art. It sounds interesting, but just knowing how much I despised, I really didn't like The Secret History. I didn't finish it. I will say that. I DNF'd The Secret History because I just couldn't go on. I'm just really afraid I'm going to feel the same thing about this one. I want to like her. I do. So there's that. Another classic. This is a modern classic. This is East of Eden. Now, I'm nervous about this because this has mixed reviews. So this is about, I think, 2 families and the drama between these 2 families. Now, Krista over at Books and Jams read this and she really didn't like it in the end. She found it really frustrating, and I'm nervous that I'm not going to like it. And it's weird because like I thought Steinbeck generally wrote shorter books. Like all the books that I've read by him years ago, I feel at this point, were all small. That said, it's a beautiful book, so maybe I should pick it up. I always think of picking it up in the summer for some reason. So there's that. And then we've got a fantasy book. Now, honestly, I feel like almost any fantasy books could have landed on this pile because I genuinely am intimidated by fantasy books. But this does sound really interesting, and I bought it recently. It's The Poppy War. This has had so much hype. People love The Poppy War. This is about a girl, I think, who ends up in training to become a warrior. So you follow her training, and then you also follow a war that ensues soon after her training is complete. And you also follow her into war. I don't know much more about it than that, and I know that people have adored this book. So probably out of everything on this list, I'm most excited to get to this one, I would say. So there's The Poppy War. Okay, here's another classic that has been on my shelves for years. This was given to me by my sister. This is Villette by Charlotte Bronte. Now, I shouldn't be nervous about this, right? Because I love Jane Eyre. Jane Eyre has this like soft spot in my heart. I listened to Jane Eyre on audio while I was in labor for Nora. I at that point, I'd had the epidural. Let's be real. This follows a young woman named Lucy Snow. Her 3 siblings die, and she leaves her home to go and start to become a teacher at a boarding school, a French boarding school in the town of Villette. And it does sound really good. Maybe I'm going to love it. I really feel like I could love it. I don't know how much more Charlotte Bronte wrote, but you know, I've still only read one twice, but I should really move on. So there's Villette. That is also intimidating. This is one of Jen Campbell's very favorite books, but it's a chunker, and that's The Crimson Petal and the White by Michelle Faber. And this follows a young woman named Sugar. She's 19 years old, and she's a prostitute in 19th century London. So she starts at the bottom, and it sounds like she works her way up through society. I am really curious about it. It's just quite long with small font, like 800-ish pages. And that's nerve-wracking to me, but it does sound really good. And I mean, Jen recommends amazing books, so I shouldn't be scared. Maybe I just need her to hold my hand through it. Okay, next is honestly a bit of a fluffy classic in a lot of ways. I've heard this read so easily, and yet the actual, topic is quite difficult. This is Gone with the Wind. I was meant to read this year, but just with everything that has gone on in the world, I didn't really feel like reading from a white perspective about the Civil War. I just didn't. And this is not only a white perspective on the Civil War, it is also, following the South. And all of our characters are from the South, and there are heroines and heroes, and I just haven't wanted to read it this year. Maybe next year, we'll see. I do want to read Gone with the Wind. I've watched the movie several times. I don't remember too much from the movie because it has been a hot second. But I need to know what happened to Scarlett O'Hara and her home and during the Civil War, and I would like to know It's just something that I'm intimidated by at this moment. Okay, here's another book that is so similar in my mind to the Goldfinch. It's unbelievable. And this is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. So this book is apparently just like, here's a book that will crush your soul, that will just make you feel like nothing is good in life. We follow a young man named Jude through his life, and it sounds like he's very depressed, and it sounds like he's depressed for good reason. Things just keep going wrong in his life. It also sounds that like he does have a good group of friends around him who try to help him, but apparently sometimes you want to like shake him at times, and you just keep thinking something's gonna get better for Jude, and then it never does. That might actually annoy me. I don't know. This is kind of mixed reviews. Either you adore this so much that like it stays in your heart forever, or you're just frustrated by it. It feels like a mixed bag. So I'm nervous. Okay, and here is the horror book. Whew, it's House of Leaves. I got this at a thrift store, and I remember picking it up and going, is this a good idea? It is long, but it's also really weird. So in some cases you've got no text. This plays with form. I don't know. This also might drive me nuts. This is about a house that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And I won't say any more than that. Well, I don't know much more than that, so I won't say any more than that. And those are all of the books. Those are my top 10 most intimidating books on my shelves. I hope that you guys are doing well, and I will chat with you soon. Bye, everyone.